My name is Katrina Pimentel. I'm a local social worker, and I primarily work with newly arrived migrants at the border, especially asylum seekers. I just wanted to respond to what Justin said about the lack of empathy and also what you echoed, Sean, about specific communities. And I think one of the issues in law enforcement is we for me would be the more of a general community response than specific law enforcement officers. I think we have to recognize there is a general cultural response to law enforcement that can be quite politicized in our current American culture, and it's at times ignores the historical context of who feels safe around law enforcement and who's been persecuted by law enforcement or not historically and currently. And that would be obviously people like myself who are white with privilege have a different response to law enforcement than someone in a neighborhood who's a person of color or who's being targeted for their economic situation or their immigration status, et cetera. I also think we have to acknowledge that there's become respecting the law enforcement profession, but recognizing that one thing is a profession and one thing is a identity. So comparing in a movement, in our community with the Black Lives Matter movement, having a response from certain people of Blue Lives Matter, comparing a profession to a socio-political racial identity, I think those kind of conversations fuel the fire between us versus them in terms of someone wearing a badge is in highly critical, highly expert situations where, as Justin was saying, there's empathy for what I've never been a police officer, what that day-to-day feels like or could look like. But there needs to be recognition that at the end of the day, all of us hold professions and not all of us hold 24-hour identities that have a history of oppression or privilege. So to me, comparing a non-chosen identity that has socio-political context is not an apt comparison to a profession of choice. So I think those conversations are critical to what we're talking about and that they're fair. I think that's the other thing I want to add is that they're fair. There is a history, there is factual information that shows that there has been discrimination against certain groups with law enforcement versus others and why that fear or mistrust has been created.